All right. Well, once again, welcome to the live stream. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Trading today was pretty crazy. Not gonna lie. I saw Powell speaking today. He was scheduled for 10:30, and I knew right away that my IFVG setups are cooked. Literally right in the middle of the session. No good. I was looking at the IB stuff too in the morning, just going through the data and stuff, and we'll go through that. Allis took 2 IBs today on EUGU, man. Feel unstoppable. Nice. Now, in terms of the EUGU setup, were you using 8 to 9 a.m. or were you using 9:30 to 10:30 a.m.? Because I think there was a discrepancy there. If you had used 8 to 9, I think those were losses. But what do you think? Vidal says 9:30, 10:30. Yeah, you know what? I feel like it might be a better idea. I saw someone else using 8 to 9. Actually, EDGEFUL pre-fills it as 8:30 to, or sorry, 8 to 9. So, Groovy Gene, what's up? Yeah, appreciate you all being here. Hope everyone had a good weekend. And I hope the weather's really good where you are. We're finally getting some spring here. Finally, it's supposed to get a high of 15 degrees. I think we had snow the other day. Pretty wild. And I mean, I don't even live anywhere crazy. I live in Toronto, right? So you'd think that it wouldn't be so cold, but it is. I guess I'm kind of used to it. Let's see. Thanks, man. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I still jumped in because the most recent time that happened, the situation ran the low still. Yeah, you know, Vidal, what's really interesting about what you just said there is you're showing your trading intuition, man. Like, you've spent enough time on the chart with what you're doing that you can intuitively make a decision that doesn't necessarily have to be so mechanical, right? That's impressive, man. That's impressive. Man, Alice, you're making me jealous. Tracy, what's going on? Making me jealous, man. 25. Woof. What I would do for 25 degrees, man. Just want to double check. You said you switched from 6 months to 3 months. What's that about? Why would you switch from 6 months to 3 months? You're talking about the expiry. Got 1 hour on ESIB. Got tired of holding. Yeah, you know what? We're going to talk about that, actually. So, anyways, once again, you know, we had news, 10:30, smack in the middle. So, for me, my IFVG setups, it was a no-trade day for me with the IFVGs. I do want to talk about... Well, here's our live stream agenda for today. So we'll just talk about the, I guess the first thing we'll talk about is the unicorn. Then we'll talk about the IFVG I saw and how I avoid a stop loss just by following some rules. And then we'll go over all the IB stuff. If anyone has any questions, just drop it in the chat and we'll get to it. If you have anything funny to add, go for it. Drop it in the chat, no stress. Okay, so before we do that, I just want to see one thing. Okay, there's that hour. Okay, so let's start off with what happened this morning. There was a unicorn. So if I were to go to the 4 hour, close this. Okay, so if I were to go to the 4 hour and try to figure out like some sort of a higher time frame bias, right here I can see the 2 to 6 a.m. candlestick and the 10 to 2 p.m. candlestick. Yeah, right here. So it would be these two right here, this one and this one. They're tapping into an H4 bearish FVG. Okay, so should definitely be having a bearish bias going into the session. If we go to the 15-minute, when the New York session opens, we get a liquidity sweep off of a 15-minute buy-side liquidity level right here, right literally at open. So if we go to the 1 minute now to align everything and look for execution models, which execution model are we going to see? We're going to see IFVG, we're going to see swing failure pattern, or we're going to see a unicorn. Today, it was a unicorn. So here is your liquidity sweep. And if we look at the lowest down closing candles before the leg that takes the liquidity, that would be these two right here. Now, you could say this setup is forming before the session begins. One thing I used to do with unicorns was that if the setup had triggered an entry before 9:30, I most likely wouldn't have taken it. But if the entry or the unicorn confirms after 9:30, then I would be a little bit more interested in taking it. But you can see right here, we got a nice breaker block, but price just literally melts. But you can see once again that when we align the H4 with the 15 minute and then the 1 minute, I mean, we get some pretty good confluence and some pretty good alignment, which is really nice. And then if we use some sort of standard deviations just to see how far this thing went in relationship to standard deviations, just double check. I don't have this set to fibs. Okay, perfect. Let's take a look and see how low it went. So -1 is about here, -2, -2.5 is around here, and then -4 and 4.5 is down there. And it looks like price, yeah, price is hovering around here. And, you know, the other thing, too, is like Powell speaking, you know, it's just throwing a huge monkey wrench into the plan, especially because he's talking at 9:30. If he was talking at 8:30, I mean, we would have probably had a better session. Well, for me, I would have had a better session. Not to say anyone else, you know, had a bad session. These trading conditions, maybe they're optimal for you. For me, they were not so optimal. Just double check here. New here. NQIB played out. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So Eskumar, we'll check it out, man. No problem. Tracy got 1R. Yeah, we talked about that. There was a bullish Uni 2 at 1045, ran 1.7 RR, 1045. So you're probably talking about this bad boy right here. You got London low sweeping. Yep. That's a pretty nice move. Did it have... Yeah, and you know the thing too with alignment on that is price was now moving into the bullish FVG. So, you know, bias starts to switch. You start looking over here. Here's 1030. You're sweeping liquidity. Sell side. You can see how when we put things together once again, setups just align, right? And then here is the actual setup that all this was talking about. And you know what? That's a pretty nice setup. I think for me, let me just move back here a second. So you can see it was under the daily EQ, something I use a lot. Max is saying, am I wrong to be in a position right now? I mean, I wouldn't say you're wrong to be in a position as long as it fits your plan. I mean, for me personally, when I'm trading IFVGs, and I'll just quickly run through this, you know, like I said, this morning it's not easy. I'll admit this month has been, it started off really good. And then it just became really bad. Just all the political stuff going on globally. You know, Trump's tweets and anything he says just can rip your setup up into pieces. And then just, you know, random these news drops that are happening, the red folders happening in you know, not in the most opportunistic times too. So. For me, at 9, I was literally looking. I was looking at what was happening at the open. I'm just trying to double check what I saw. I think it was the London low, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, London low. I think that's where I had seen the setup. So here's London low. Like I said, it wasn't much for me to do because on the, you know, in terms of wanting to take a short. Now, I know we talked about the 4-hour being bearish. I know that the 50-minute was bearish too. But for me, I needed an hourly sweep, which would have meant this level right up here. And price never gave that, right? And then if I go to the 15-minute, London high's already been taken. So it seems like it makes sense for price to draw lower to Asia low or whatnot. So let's go to the 1 minute quickly. I'll just show you what I was seeing. So when price started to sweep London low, it was literally right where the it was right where the daily EQ was, And so we're talking about this area right here, and price broke right through it. Now, when this was happening, ES was, I think, respecting the daily EQ, and it was respecting the London low that it had. But you can see for me, IFVG wise, I mean, there's not really much for me to work with here. I started moving up to the higher time frame, so like a 2-minute setup or maybe a 3-minute setup. So I started seeing this. I thought, okay, that the 2 minutes interesting. If we just hit next, watch what happens. So the thing too is if price were to reclaim the daily EQ, then and ES were to do the same thing and confirm some sort of an IFVG setup, then things look pretty good. But once again, Powell is speaking at 10:30, and as we know, Powell is punctual. He's not like Trump where they'll set a session and then, or like a meeting or some sort of speech, and he doesn't show up for an hour. With Powell, he's on point. He's very punctual that way. So I don't really want to be in a trade right before Powell speaking. And like I said, I wasn't planning on trading anyways, but I was still paper trading in the sense of just tape reading. Now I like the 3-minute personally better. There's less candlesticks forming this type of a setup, and you'll see right here you get the confirmation. Now if Powell is not speaking, I'm in this trade 100%. Why am I in this trade? Well, let's go to the checklist. We're inside the New York kill zone. We're on the right side of premium and discount because we're sweeping the daily EQ. We have a higher time frame liquidity sweep, which is we're using the London low and we're using the daily EQ. We get a nice strong reaction off that level. We want to see a nice V shape, which we're getting. And then we want to see strong momentum confirming the IFVG, right? Which we get right here. We don't want to see lots of candlesticks here and then something forms through here. Not to say you can't use it. It's just the cleaner, the better. It's a singular setup because all the FVGs that price, like those imbalances, are way up here, right? So price has something to reach for. And then in terms of the higher time frame, IRL, is there a 1 hour or 4 hour bullish FVG? And you can see there's one right here on the 1 hour. I mean, that's all I need to see is just one or two, and then we know on the 4 hour it already had one. And then the final step on the checklist was to see if there was oh, this thing went way ahead. Wow, that wasn't very nice, ruining my surprise. Yeah, and the other thing too was we had bullish SMT with ES. So I mean, if I'm going through my checklist, this is like S-tiered setup. However, look at the time, and that's the problem for me. I did not take this because of Powell speaking, and this is the way things go. But here's the thing: that one little rule saves me from a stop loss, right? So that was all I watched for IFVGs. It hasn't been very fun on the IFVG front. Not to say you can't take an IFVG setup using lower time frame liquidity sweeps, like maybe the 15-minute, for example. Anything's possible there. For me, I'm using hour and 4 hour, and then I'm using overnight session highs and lows, daily EQ, previous day high and previous day low. So all right, so that was that. Want to talk about, well, does anyone have any questions about that? Let me just check the chat. I saw some stuff going on here. Yes, Powell messed that up. Wrong to be in a position now. What are you taking? Oh, right. CSD fractal model. Yes, 5 minute. Should you close? Oh, man. All right, well, we'll take a look at that in a sec. I just want to jump quickly now to the IB stuff. I decided to just kind of create a thread inside my channel. So right here, Trader Exkira, and then I just created an IB EDGEFUL thread. And the reason I'm doing it is I just want to capture all the data. And I figured I would share it, what I see, and things like the stats and showing you guys on Friday how I do things. And so I'm just kind of posting everything I see. So it's a lot of this kind of stuff. I'm going to tighten it up a little bit more. Like today, for example. So like this morning, once again, Powell speaking. So to me, it's just like a no trade day. regardless, because, and I said this on Friday, right? Like you could have a setup that's saying, 100% or whatever, or like just super high probability, but then you get someone like Powell or Trump speaking and, your setup is toast, right? So you can follow the thread somewhere around here. Just hit the follow button, and then you will get notified anytime I put posts in here. So if you would like to do that, go for it. The other reason I'm setting this up is just for myself. It's just an easier way for me to track everything, like I said. So think of it kind of like a journal. So anyways, here's the morning session. These are the notes I had, and I was looking at, do you guys want me to talk about the morning, or should we just look at the afternoon? What do you think? What do you guys want to do? Because I can totally talk about the morning stuff. Or we could just look at what's happening right now in the market and go through that. AM session, okay. We will definitely go over the AM session. I just didn't know if you guys want to look at the lunchtime session, because it's just starting to, it already confirmed. It looks like the setup's actually already played out, to be honest with you, too. I'm looking at the price action here. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, let's start with the AM, and then we'll move to the PM, because a lot of it is just repeatable process and just the way we interpret the data. So let me go to my notes. New York AM session. Okay, so this is all the note-taking I took when it comes to the IB stuff. So MNQ, MES, MGC, MCL, and I'm also going to start looking at 6E. I'm going to stay away from the Forex pair. I'm going to stick with the futures pairing, okay? Now, this data is all coming from EDGEFUL, which is this right here. If we look at, let's look at MNQ first, because that's the first one on the list, right? So basically, here's EDGEFUL. We're looking at the New York session, 9:30 to 4. The hour is 9:30 to 10:30. We're looking specifically at Monday, and we want to see three things. The first thing is we want to see what the overall percentage is in terms of what's going to happen or what could happen, right? So it's telling us right here what did happen. But when I was looking at it this morning, let me just double check. It still says 75. Yeah, it does. Okay, so this is the first thing, right? If the high forms first, there's a 75% chance that the low is going to go, okay? And then if a low forms first, then there's about a 71% chance that the high is going to get taken out. And then we would move one step deeper into our analysis, meaning what happens at 10:30 when price closes above the IB, so above that midpoint. So if price closes above the midpoint and the highs form first, meaning we're looking for shorts, there's about 100% chance, okay? I know it's funny when we see this, but it's based off of 6 months of data. It's telling us that in 6 months worth of data, when this situation has happened on a Monday, it's never failed. That's what this means, okay? Does that mean that it can fail? Of course it can mean that, right? But like I said, those are most likely probably going to be due to outside factors, right? Like Trump speaking, and I saw that happen last week, and I talked about that last week. And then on the flip side, if the low forms first, we have a 75% chance that the high gets taken out. So it's still supporting, longs and shorts depending on what scenario plays out next. And then the other note I'll make is the below midpoint of the IB. So if the high forms first and price is closing below the midpoint of the IB, so that's just at 10:30, it's supporting a 71% chance that the low gets taken out. And then if the low gets formed first, this is where it gets really interesting. So if price closes below the midpoint and the low had formed first, meaning we're looking for longs, right? That's the idea here. But it's telling us that in all of these situations over the past 6 months, when this scenario has happened, the inverse play has worked, meaning 100% of the time, price will have closed below the midpoint, below the IB low in this scenario, even if the low has formed first, just because it closed below the midpoint of the IB. So just showing you the data, how I'm kind of extracting it. So I'm just running through those 3 sequences, and I'm going to my notepad and I'm just making the notes, right? So IB high first, 75% chance to the low, it's a short. If it's above the MP, 100% chance to the IBL, supporting the short. Below the MP, 71%, right? And we already went over that. So this is how I'm making my notes. This is something I would, if you're using EDGEFUL, feel free to do it this way if you like, or do it any other way you like. I just find, for me, I need to kind of put things on paper so then I can kind of go back to it and refer to it. A lot of people just kind of have it in their head like, oh, I'm looking for shorts today, or I'm looking for longs. But for me, I'm being a little bit more careful. So let's go back to the charts. Let's go back to MNQ. And let's look at what happened, right? So with MNQ, let's go, whoops. So in hindsight, we can see that the high formed first and then the low formed second, right? So we're immediately looking at a short bias and a short setup. So here's the high. So any of this stuff doesn't matter. We're looking at just basically this. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to move it over here and I'm just going to paste it. Whoops. Who is Leo? Okay. See you later, Leo. That was weird. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I forgot to have changed this thing. One sec. Thanks, Abe. Good looking out there. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, there we go. So we know that the high forms first and then the low forms first, and we're looking in between 9:30 and 10:30. We can also see at 10:30 prices closing below the midpoint. Okay, so if we go back to our data was saying if the high forms first, then the low, we have a 75% chance for price to take out the low first. If price closes above the midpoint, 100% chance for the short. If price closes below the MP, 71% chance of the short working out. Now, as you can see, price closes below the IB low before tagging our entry at the midpoint, right? What's really interesting, though, is it still worked. Even if you waited and tried to take it again right here, it still worked a second time. So that's pretty interesting. Let's take a look at MES. So MES, same thing. High forms first, low forms second. Price closes below the midpoint. So that's right here. Let's take a look at these stats in relationship to the chart. I'll just put it up here this time, right? So this was a lower percentage play. And I was talking about this last week, that what's the threshold? So for me, my threshold, I was saying like 68%, but I'm starting to now think, having it in the 70s is like the way to go. It's just maybe not worth the risk. But 63% chance if the high forms first that we're taking out the low. If we close above the midpoint, there's a 100% chance for price to go lower. If we close below the MP, there's a 57% chance. So 63% and 57% are not as attractive to me. And this is where we talked about trading blindly, right? Now, can these things work? Of course they can work, right? Like I think I saw Matt just make a post saying that, hey, the ES setup worked perfectly, right? But, when we look at the data, the whole point of it is to just filter out trades, because you don't need to be in every single trade, right? And you're playing probability. So in this case, yes, it worked out, but statistically speaking, the stats didn't look that good, in my opinion, right? And then, of course, you have Powell speaking. So you got that curveball. But nonetheless, this thing worked out. So let's take a look at the next one. So the next one is MGC. So same as NQ and ES, high forms first, low forms second. Price closes below the midpoint. Let's look at the stats. So IB high to IB low. And these numbers don't look very good either, right? So if the high forms first, there's a 45% chance price goes to the low. If price closes below the midpoint, there's a 40% chance that price goes to the low. So even though you get your entry, this trade's still technically open, right? But you would be in profit. If price had closed above, this would have been a much more attractive trade, statistically speaking, right? But once again, Powell speaking. So we'll keep an eye on this and see what happens. Because now there's also the PM session range to consider. And then finally there's also CL, MCL. So we had the low form first, then the high. What's the note say? Here's the low, then the high. Let's copy and paste this over. Okay, so if the IB, now I know Vidal had taken a inverse position on this, I believe, taken the short. So for me, looking at this, if the low forms first, 57% chance that price goes to the high first before the low gets tagged. If it closes above the midpoint, there's a 60% chance that the price goes to the high first. If it closes below, there's a 50-50 chance. So once again, you're looking at statistics. You're using the data to just filter trades. That is literally all you're doing here. Because once again, you don't have to be in everything. You're trying to set yourself up to be in the best trades so that you're entering the highest of probabilities. That's all it is. It's not just like a random every day I look to see if it's high or low and then I enter. I think in the long run, those types of stats are very unpredictable, potentially. I know we've seen other people do a lot of back testing and say there's been some pretty bad stretches of price action. And, when you think about bad stretches of price action, there's no way of telling when it's going to start and when it's going to end. And if you're over leveraging with your risk, not accounting for, the number of losses that you might get, you could blow your account, right? You could. So I find having these numbers are a good way to just filter things out. And, as we know, nothing is ever going to be guaranteed or things like that, right? Like we should never think, anything is a sure bet. Even if the numbers are telling us, X, Y, and Z. This market is insanely irrational at times. And like I said, that you have to factor the news. You have to factor in if Trump says something randomly. These things can blow your setup apart. And the stats can't account for Trump. You know what I mean? So low forms first, high forms second. If price closes below, there's a 50-50 chance. And right here is where price closes at 1030 below the MP. And what we get is price. If you were going long, you would have got stopped out right here. And then you would have watched price go all the way the other way. So depending on how you wanted to play this, how you look at things, everyone's going to be looking at the data differently. I will look at it differently than, let's say, Vidal, the way he looks at it. He saw this as an opportunity, and I don't mean to single you out, but I just think it's important to talk about it. He analyzed the data, and for him, he felt taking the inverse play off the data made sense and was a good risk. And he was rewarded for that risk. And it was good analysis. But the way my brain's working is telling me to just not take the trade, right? Because I don't like my odds. And if I had gone long, I would have got stopped out. I would not have thought to go short in this situation. So that was the morning session. I think there was one other asset to check, which was 6E. And I think Allis took 6E, if I'm not mistaken, right? Now this is what I love. This is what I like to see. Super clean. This is why I think we all got drawn into IBs, is because of setups like this where the range is just so clean and clear. The entry has virtually zero drawdown, and then you have price just flush to your TP, right? This is why I think we all drew to, or why we were all drawn to the IB in the first place. Because there's no other sort of market structure or ICT involved. It's crazy. I was trying to talk to my wife about this, and she can follow me with charts, but I was like, you got to see the data on this. And she's like, what are you talking about, data? She's like, don't you deal with you know, ICT and FVGs and swing highs and lows and support and resistance. And I'm like, you don't need it with this stuff. It's crazy. And she thought it was crazy for saying it. But I'm like, I don't know what to say. I was like, I just got to show it to you or something. So let's take a look at 6E. We know the high forms first, we know the low forms second, and we know price closes below the midpoint. So what does the data tell us? So here's 6E, we have the high, we have the low. Let's put it up here so we can all see. So if the high forms first, 73% chance we're going to the low. If we close below the MP, 88% chance to the IBL. And if it closes above the MP, I put IB. Wait, hold on a second. That should be L. Okay, there we go. You still have a really good percentage to take that trade. So how would you play something like this? Because you get the setup here, right? The way I would have done this, I probably would have entered a good size in my position here. And then if price were to have gone higher, there's probably a good chance I would probably throw in another, I don't know, quarter size positions of whatever my full size position was, just to take that added risk. Only because we closed below, and it's saying 88% chance, and you already have a very high percentage that price is going to go low and tag out that low. So I would probably add like another quarter size position if price went higher and tag this level right here. Of course, I would want to see the reaction too. And then what that will do is just increase my RR, right? If I, take that gamble. But in this case, the position worked out beautifully. This is super clean. When you start seeing stats that are high like this, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I want to be in higher probability setups that are like this, right? Above 70%. And then you have that secondary confirmation in terms of, the midpoint closures, having that also be at a higher percentage. So I've been noticing when I'm putting the two together and analyzing it, and it's super clean, you literally get moves like this happening. And it's a beautiful thing to see. Anyone have any questions? Appreciate you guys all being here. It is being recorded as well, so no stress on that front. Let's take a look at the PM now. So let's change this to PM. Oops, 1300. And what we can also do is we can go over GLOBEX too. I think I have the data. I just have to double check that I still have the data. Okay, so here's our PM session. Now I already took notes for the PM. Let me just go back up here. All right, sorry, not PM, the lunch session. So let's start with 6E. So 6E, low to high. Price closes above the midpoint. What is our data telling us? So IB low, and what it's showing us is this. So if the low forms first, 83% chance to the high. If price closes above the MP, 82% chance to the high as well. And even if it closed below, there is a really good chance that price is going higher. What ends up happening though is right at 1 o'clock, the next couple candles close above and take out the target. So the stats are right, the data's right, there's just no setup. Let's take a look at what happened with MNQ and also with MES during lunch. So that's this right here. Let me just close these indicators off for a sec so everybody can see a little bit clearly. So we can see high to low, high to low. And the other thing I'll say too is if you ever see MNQ and MES uncorrelated in terms of whether the high or the low got formed first, I would be very careful in those situations because we want things to be correlated, right? We don't want things to be uncorrelated because then that shows us that there's obviously a crack in correlation. There's some form of SMT things like these are reversal type things. It's hard to tell which one to trust in those situations, even though the SMT can kind of give us a hint. I think you definitely got to steer clear. And exactly like what Tracy said, cracking correlation, no trade. The thing with IB, what I noticed is you want correlation as much as possible, okay? So highs and lows, price closes below the midpoint. What does the data show us? So highs to lows, let's just copy this all in here and then, whoops, wrong chart. Okay, and so a couple of interesting things to note here. Number one, you'll notice I've written notes like inverse long. The data was really weird. I'm not gonna lie. When I was looking at it today, it was showing 58% chance to the IB high if the highs form first. So you're looking at an inverse long. I think if you were gonna even remotely attempt taking that kind of a position, you definitely want price to close above the midpoint. But as you can see, price closed below the midpoint, 83% chance we're going lower, and sure enough, it doesn't tag the entry and it does go lower. With ES, same thing, right? 70% chance that price is going higher. This is just based off of the data, because typically what happens with the lunchtime is it's a continuation, of course, off of what's been happening in the morning. So typically, if price is already heading in a specific direction, no matter whether price has formed a high or low first within that 12 to 1 p.m. range, like it's still following that trend. And keep in mind, it's over 6 months, right? So we've had a very bullish time up until recently. But price closed below the midpoint, 75% chance we're going lower, and it did do that. So the data was right. There's just no entry. Let's take a look at MGC and MCL and see what the data shows us there. So MGC had the high and then the low form. So MGC had the high and then the low form. Now, looking at these numbers just briefly there. Whoops. Let's pull it down here. Stretch this out a little more. Okay. So I think you guys can all see that. So IBH, or the IB high first, 50% to the high. Inverse long, 38% to the low. So the stats aren't even looking good. It's similar to the NQES type thing, right? If price closes above the midpoint, there's a 67% chance price is going to the high, right? So that's that supporting that inverse long setup. And this is why when I see stats like this is where I would wait. We talk about we ask questions like, when can we front run the entry and enter early? The only time I would ever do that is if you have high high percentage or probability across the board. Number one. Number two is that whether price closes above or below, you still have that high percentage, right? Because then it gives you that conviction that no matter what, the probability is that price is going to head in that direction. So in those situations, I would consider entering early. And then if it went, in this case, if I'm trying to go long, then I would even add to the position maybe, right? With like a quarter size, right? Something like that, like we were talking about before. But in this situation, very important to wait, because if you were thinking you could go long here, this is where the candle closes, right below the EQ. If it's below the midpoint, you have a 40-40 chance to go up or down. So you don't really have very good odds for the lunchtime session with MGC. The thing is, the short did play out, though. It just melted. So once again, just because you have the data and it keeps you, it keeps you in quotes safe, you can miss out on trades. It's not impossible, right? The thing with this is that, in my opinion, I don't think this should make you shift your perspective on the data itself, because once again, you're looking at it and it's just a filter to keep you safe. It's not there to, always keep you in winning trades, right? It's to keep you safe more often than not. That's the whole point. Okay, so let's go to CL. CL had the high and then the low supporting that idea of a short. Let's see what the data said. MCL. Oops. Looks like okay, so high first, then to the low. So 64% chance price goes lower. If it closes above the midpoint, it's a 100% chance that it's going lower. If it closes below the midpoint, there's a 60% chance that it's going lower. And like I said to you about the threshold, like I personally want to see things in the 70s and higher. If it's in the 60s, I'm not so interested. And you know, when I look back at some of the data on my own end or on my own side, I have noticed when you have that lower percentage, you do get more of the chop, and you don't get more of the price action just like ripping to the TP like I showed you with 6E, right? You will get more chop, and you know, you could get taken out, right? Because the odds are not exactly, you know, that great. What's great is when you have like, you know, 70, 75%, 80, obviously anything higher, right? CL is a trickster. I wait closer to the end on it and try not to front run it, even on IB. That's from Tracy, and you can see why. Now, if you have access to other data from EDGEFUL, which when I was like, I'm slowly working through the videos and things like that, and I'll show you what I mean. So, like, if you go to Get Started here, you know, they have different reports you can use to help you put things together. I know when I was looking at Mr. Zink's stuff, I know he's using a handful of this kind of data. So inside bars is being a very big one. I'm not going to get into it, maybe another day, but I know inside bars is a big thing. I've seen with other people, opening candle continuation is another thing. And that's just kind of more on the orb perspective, right? So like what that means is like, you know, when you have that range, if price closes, you know, let's say above that range, then the continuation is what's the percentage that it goes higher, that kind of stuff. There's data on that. So I think Mr. Zink puts a lot of other data in play with his decision making, which sometimes can lead to why he will take a position earlier, right? And Vidal's offering some other reports that are also very valuable, and I haven't even got to those yet, right? Outside days, gap fills, I've seen them. I haven't had a chance to just sit down with it. My attention has literally just been on trying to understand and, you know, properly analyze. I say properly, but just the way my mind works, to analyze the data based off of the rejection of the IB and the midpoint. Kumar says, as per your data, which is the best asset which has played out IB during New York? Well, I mean, that's a pretty interesting question. Because if I just look at it from this perspective, we can just see what's happening specifically here. So let's go. There's New York here. You know, here's all days. So, I mean, I'm not really sure how to answer that question, because I think it just depends on the day. It depends on how it closes. You got news thrown in the mix. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky to say which asset's the best. But this is why I'm watching all of these assets: 6E, MCL, MGC, MES, and MNQ. Now, does it mean I'm going to trade all of them? No. But it allows me the opportunity to like screen what is happening amongst those assets, right? And exactly like what Tracy said, options. Just, you got to have options, because, you know, in a situation like this, I want to have I want to see a setup that is the highest of probabilities, and then that's what I'm going to try to take. But I have to observe what's happening on the chart too, because some of these setups will go to the target and there's no entry. Meanwhile, another one hasn't gone to the target yet and hasn't even hit the entry. So it's like a process of elimination in a way, right? Some people might be a little bit more rigid. Well, they'll say, I'm only trading MNQ and I'm only trading MES, right? I mean, but that's just personal preference. Why would you do something like that? less stress, right? Your mind only has to look at one or two things, and then, you can validate or invalidate very quickly. Steve says, on Ashtrade's YouTube, it only has some old streams of yours from 2024 to 2025. Where do your most recent streams reside? Great question, Steve. If you go into AshCap Discord, and if you go into my channel, I have a section here called live streams. If you click this, this is where I share every single live stream I do with you guys. These are unlisted YouTube replay videos. They're not available technically to the public. They're just available to this community. If other people have the link, of course they can watch it, but my whole purpose was to share it with you guys because you're in this community, and we're doing these live streams. They're a bit more intimate, I guess, right? But this is where you'll find them. I've started to, for a while now, I've been, one of the biggest problems I used to have with people with live streams, they never discuss the things they talk about, like in terms of like, show me like a write-up, like what did you talk about? Because like there's some with Matt, for example, he had so much content on WAP when I first joined his premium side, and thankfully I was able to, like, it wasn't like he had a lot, but it wasn't like what it is now, and everything was just live stream. There was no sort of notes on what he talked about specifically, if there was anything important. So you had to go through all of them. I was like, man, I really wish you had notes. So this is why I'm putting notes down on all the things we talk about. So that way, if there's something specific you're looking for, like let's say you're looking for IB, and I'm recently starting to talk about IB, like I'm putting it in here, right? And you can see it. So if you want to just look at IB stuff, you can see in the notes, oh, there's IB stuff here. I'm going to watch this one, right? Tracy's just made through them all. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Oh, you're watching my videos and you, my goodness, that was my start. I've come a long way from there. Wow. A lot of trial and error in those videos, and just sharing just my data, my information, my understanding of what Matt's foundational teachings are all about, right? Just the goal was just to help people, fast track and help them find their way. And I think with this trading game, it's really not about like someone copying another trader. It's more about like you find a trader that you align with, or maybe two or three, whatever the number is. But then in terms of the process, maybe they have a system that resonates with you, and then that's what you do is you learn that system inside out, and then you study on your own, and then make some sense of it, right? So then you would trade things your way. So anyways, that's where my live streams are. Okay, so we talked about, I think everything today. So we did all the New York stuff. We did the lunchtime stuff. And then I think last night for GLOBEX, I don't know if I have the data for that, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure I'm able to pull that up readily. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop it off. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that, Tracy. Yeah, I mean, we all have a start, right? We all have a start, and we just kind of run with it and see where the journey takes us, I mean, I probably sound like a broken record when I say this, but, a lot of that was trying to understand trading personality, right? The IQ is growing, but personality-wise, in terms of like the characteristics of how I like to trade, or the time, or the style, that was all part of the growth back then. And then, like I keep saying, when you start to merge the two together more closely, then you start to really hammer out things that like a model that works for you, and you can become profitable with it. And it's a you versus you challenge at that point, right? And that's where the journaling comes in, self-reflection, and that all the hard stuff, really, right? And I would highly recommend to read that book, Best Loser Wins, when you get to that point, because that book can definitely help get you over that hump, or help you break through the wall if you're stuck. Chances are it's a psychological barrier. Are you trading Forex pairs, sir? I am not. I am only looking at 6E futures. Only because I have prop firm accounts with, you know, the big guys that we know, right? So I'm only going to trade it on those. And I also don't like the idea of trading before 9. If I were to use FX pairs with like MT5 or whatever through another prop firm, like let's say, you know, the 5%ers or something like that. I just feel like really, really weird taking a trade like before 9:30 because that volatility can just like rip me up. Like you never know what's going to happen at 9:30. So I would rather wait like usual. And that's why I like kind of Alice's approach with, even if he's trading EU or GU, he's waiting 9:30, 10:30. I think that's pretty smart. So let's see. Let's go back to... let's go back to Sunday, 8 o'clock, or let's go back to 6 o'clock. Okay, so here's the open. Let's turn on the replay. I know this is 6E, so I'm going to get off this, and I'll move to, let's just move to NQ. And I will also, what I'll do is I'll use this other indicator I have. There we go. Okay, so Asia IBs. So if we're looking at last night with Asia IB, this is the GLOBEX open. Now I don't have the data with me per se, but we can kind of, I think there was a discrepancy here, right? So NQ had the low and then the high. This did end up failing. If we look at what ES did, I think ES had the high first. Yeah, it did right here. So ES had the high first and then the low. So this is exactly what I was talking about with the cracking correlation and what Tracy was saying in the chat. When you see this, that's no trading. That is a no trade zone. Do not take the trade. It's not worth it. Just stay out because we want correlation. And sometimes you're going to have to wait for price to close too to really understand if there's that cracking correlation. Because if you're looking at this price right here, the price is ripping higher. If this actually ends up tagging this level and sweeping it, that then means that the low form first and then the high form first. And it can happen in the last second. So it's really, really important to just wait sometimes, especially if the data is telling you to hold off. Let's check out GC. So GC low to the high, and this also failed. If you're just playing, like I said, if you don't have the data, you're looking at things the wrong way. Now Vidal's saying inverse play. I remember seeing the data on that, and it was totally supporting the inverse play. So I 100% agree with you there. I wish I had the data to show you guys, but I don't. But this was a great example of the inverse play, and I think it was because was it because that price closed below? I can't remember what it was. I wish I had my notes, but I don't. Let me just double check on my side. One sec. Maybe I do have the notes. Low, high. Oh, yeah. Okay, I do have the notes here. Wow. So it says here on my notes with MGC, if the low forms first, there's a 58% chance that price goes to the high. So that's not really good. If price closes above the midpoint, there's a 100%. If price closes, above the midpoint, there's a 76% chance. Oh, you know what? I'm reading this wrong. One sec. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to copy it and share it. It's probably going to be easier that way. I'm trying to read it. Okay, there we go. I should have just done this in the first place. Okay, so IB low first, 58% chance to the high. If it closes above the midpoint, 65% to the high. If price closes below the midpoint, 100% chance for the inverse short. This is such an amazing... I remember seeing this and I was like, oh my God, this played out perfectly. Here is basically the closure right here. Right? This closes right at 7 below the midpoint. Now you know what the play is. The play is the short. 100% chance. You have to take that opportunity. But this is why the data is so brilliant, because I mean, this is a wonderful example where if you're just trading, did the high form first, did the low form first, I'll enter off the midpoint to the opposing side. This is how you avoid those types of losses on a setup like that. When you have the data, you can now work with what's happening intuitively and then make those decisions to inverse your trade and take that trade the other way. And now, instead of taking a loss, trading blindly, you've taken a winner using the data, seeing the map, seeing things clear. So, wonderful example on that. And let's take a look at CL now. CL had the low form first, then the high, and yeah, I think you took a loss on that one. Let me go back to my notes here. So the low form first, then the high. All right, so in this situation, let me just get rid of all the weird lines. Put that back up here. Okay, so what is it saying to us? It's saying if the low forms first, there's a 76% chance price is going to sweep the high. And if price closes below the midpoint, there's 0%. There's no data. So, like, what do you do in a situation like that? Because it's something that's never happened before, right? So let's say you took the long, right? It's saying here below the midpoint, 0% chance, or 0%, meaning this hasn't happened, so it can't quantify any sort of probability. But if you just blindly take the long, here's your stop loss right here, right? So for me, if I'm reading this, what this tells me is to just not take the trade, because I don't have clear probability on what it means to see price have the low form first and then close below the midpoint. Better to stay on the right side of the equation and just not take the trade. And this is once again another way that the data helps you, right? Filter the trades. Sometimes it's going to help you stay safe. Sometimes you're going to see price go to the TP like we saw today, right? This is where we talked about the trading personality and your trading IQ and how you need to be very aware of yourself, because in those moments, that's where the FOMO kicks in and you start breaking rules, right? People break rules when they follow their rules and then price does the opposite of what their rules are intended for. And they think, oh man, I should have just done it. That was such an easy, short or long. And then guess what? The next time it happens, you don't follow your data and then you get stop loss. And then you're like, man, why didn't I follow the data? You see the cycle? Devil cycle, man. So it's never going to be perfect. And that's the point. You're not aiming for perfection, right? No one has 100% win rate. The goal is to remain profitable and to keep your accounts safe. The only way you stay the most safe is actually by not being in the market. So, anyone has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. We've covered a lot of things today, and that's pretty much all I got for you guys. If you want to sub to EDGEFUL or sub to anything I use, which is like the 2 degrees indicators, or I think the one shot, one kill is going to end, by the way. I think there's a lot of firms. I think Apex was probably the last one that had the no consistency, like pass in one day. Take care, bro. See you, Vidal. I think they're starting to jump on board with the saying that might be a prohibited way to trade. So if you do something like that, it's a breach of your account. So this might actually be over, which is crazy to think about. So might have to remove this. I know DTR has another amazing endeavor occurring, or that he's working on. And hey, no problem, Finest. And I think it involves like a trading journal and some other stuff. But anyways, I don't want to ruin the full surprise. I'm just excited for what he's got going on. But yeah, big shout out to Day Trader Realtor. And yeah, if you want any of my links, they're all here. They're affiliate links, of course, so I appreciate your support. Right now, I am fully engaged with EDGEFUL. I'm just mesmerized by the amount of data here and the amount of, I guess, just like a different way of thinking about things. I think it's quite fascinating. And I'm still learning a lot of these other things and how they work out and how they play, and is it necessary for me to use? So lots of cool stuff here. Yeah, if you have any questions though, feel free to drop in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're good. Appreciate everyone being here. All right. Thanks, Med. Hey, thanks, Steve. Appreciate you. Okay, everybody. Have a good week. I'll be back on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and safe trading. Market's really weird, so just stay on the side of caution. Try to execute A+ setups for yourself. Don't bend any rules and things like that. And yeah, be back on Friday. So peace out, everybody. God bless.